Since the dawn of humanity, we have looked to the stars and asked the same fundamental questions. Are we alone? Is there intelligent life beyond our world? For millennia, these were questions for philosophers and poets. But in the 20th century, that question changed. It became less about if they exist, and more about if they are already here. The summer of 1947 was a turning point. Within the span of a few weeks, two extraordinary events on American soil would ignite a global firestorm of fascination, fear, and controversy. These incidents, one on a quiet island, the other in a desolate desert, created the blueprint for nearly every UFO story that followed. Tonight we delve into these foundational cases, the bizarre encounter at Maury Island and the legendary crash at Roswell. But the story doesn't end there. We will then journey from these public spectacles into the intensely private, terrifying, and often silenced world of personal encounters. Stories of missing time, inexplicable evidence, and direct contact with the unknown. These are the stories that linger in the shadows long after the headlines have faded. Our story begins on June 21, 1947. For Harold Dahl, a harbor patrolman, it was supposed to be a routine day on the water near Maury Island. He was on patrol with his son, two rookie crewmen, and his dog. The sea was calm, the sky was clear, but what he saw next would shatter that tranquility forever. Gazing upward, Dahl and his crew witnessed a formation of 6 massive aircraft floating silently about 2,000 feet above their boat. Dahl described them as being made of a reflective material, each about 100 feet across. They were flat, like donuts, with a large hole in the center. Along the sides were what he believed to be observation windows. The crew watched, stunned, as 5 of the craft began circling the 6th. This central craft seemed to be in distress. It wobbled, then began a slow, unsteady descent toward the water. Panic set in on the patrol boat. Fearing a collision, Dahl steered his vessel toward the shore. Once on the beach, Dahl grabbed his camera, determined to get photographic evidence of the bizarre spectacle. As he snapped pictures, the central craft, now hovering at about 500 feet, was met by one of the other ships. The two craft connected, or at least appeared to touch, for several minutes. Then Dahl heard a dull thump. It was followed by another, and then another. Through his binoculars, Dahl saw the central craft ejecting what looked like a shower of debris from its center hole. At first he thought it might be paper, but as it rained down he realized it was something far more dangerous: white-hot, lightweight metal and dark lava-like rocks that hissed and steamed as they hit the water. The crew scrambled for cover below deck. In the chaos, Dahl's son was struck in the arm, and his dog was killed instantly. Dahl tried to radio for help, but the transmitter was dead. After a few terrifying minutes, the rain of debris stopped. The strange airships ascended rapidly, joining together before zooming westward and vanishing. Dahl reported the incredible incident to his supervisor, Fred Chrisman. The photos he took were disappointing, blurry, indistinct shapes that Chrisman dismissed as film defects. Determined to prove his story, Dahl returned to the island to collect physical samples of the fallen material. He reported that as he gathered the fragments, one of the aircraft reappeared, hovering silently above him as if watching his every move. But the strangest part of the Maury Island saga was yet to come. The next morning, Dahl was visited by a man in a black suit. The stranger suggested they get breakfast. At the diner, the man didn't ask questions. Instead, he gave a chillingly precise account of everything Dahl had experienced. Then he delivered a warning. He told Dahl that bad things would happen to him and his family if he continued to talk about what he saw. This encounter is now legendary, one of the first documented appearances of the mysterious and menacing Men in Black. Despite the threat, Dahl and Chrisman sent a package containing the metal fragments to a publisher named Ray Palmer. The Maury Island case had officially entered the public record, becoming a story of enduring mystery and high strangeness. While the Maury Island story simmered in the background, a new, even more explosive event was about to unfold. Less than 2 weeks later, the focus of the world would shift to the small, unassuming town of Roswell, New Mexico. On July 8, 1947, the Public Information Office at the Roswell Air Army Field released a press statement that would electrify the nation. An intelligence officer, the release stated, had been fortunate enough to gain possession of a flying disc. The military had it. The rumors were true. For a brief moment, it seemed official. We were not alone. Newspapers across the globe ran with the headline. But just as quickly as the story broke, it was suppressed. A mere 24 hours later, the military held another press conference. The high-ranking general, Roger Ramey, changed the story completely. It was a mistake, he said. The object wasn't a flying saucer at all. It was a common weather balloon. To the astonishment of many today, the public seemed to accept this explanation. The Roswell story, once a global sensation, vanished from the headlines and faded into memory for nearly 27 years. It wasn't until the late 1970s that the truth began to claw its way back into the light. The original witnesses, now older and no longer bound by military duty, began to speak. Major Jesse Marcel, the very intelligence officer who had collected the debris, went public. He described a material unlike anything on Earth, as thin as foil but impossible to dent or burn, covered with strange, purple, hieroglyphic-like symbols. In his own words, it was not of this world. He was adamant it was no weather balloon. Following Marcel, a flood of other witnesses came forward. Morticians reported receiving calls from the base asking for child-sized coffins. Nurses claimed to have seen strange, small bodies. The narrative grew, painting a picture of a massive military cover-up. Perhaps the most compelling testimony came last. Lieutenant Walter Haut, the man who had written and released the original flying disc press release under orders, left a sworn affidavit to be opened only after his death in 2005. In it, he confessed everything. The weather balloon story, he wrote, was a complete fabrication, a cover story. He claimed to have personally seen not only the recovered craft, which was being stored in a hangar, but also the bodies of its non-human occupants. This deathbed confession from a central figure in the event has made the Roswell incident the most enduring and debated UFO case in history. From these public spectacles, we turn to the intensely private. For every Roswell, there are thousands of stories that are never reported, whispered in confidence or locked away in fear of ridicule. These are the personal accounts, the individual experiences that form the unsettling modern folklore of alien abduction. They share common threads, chilling patterns that repeat across continents and decades. The first and most disorienting of these is the phenomenon of missing time. Imagine going about your evening. One moment it's 9 p.m., the next you blink and it's 2 a.m. You have no memory of the intervening 5 hours. This is a terrifyingly common element. One man we heard from recalled losing 4 hours between showering and getting into his car. He had no memory of what happened, only a deep, lingering feeling of violation, the kind an assault victim might feel. He knew something had been done to him, but the memory was a black hole. In another account, 2 teenage friends were stargazing on a trampoline around 1 a.m. They witnessed a colossal UFO move across the sky. In total sync, without a word, they both flipped onto their stomachs, hiding.
What felt like only a few minutes of holding their breath passed, but when the craft was gone and they finally looked up, it was bright daylight. It was nearly 8 a.m. 7 hours had been stolen from them in what felt like an instant. This silent theft of time is often the first clue that a person's reality has been hijacked. Beyond lost time, many encounters leave behind disturbing physical evidence, scars of the unknown that defy any logical explanation. One college student had a vivid dream of being on a hospital gurney. The next morning, she discovered 2 perfectly parallel, impossibly thin cuts on her face. They were finer than a human hair and sealed with a clear gel, with no blood. Years later, a routine dental X-ray revealed a strange square anomaly in her jaw.